Gentleman from Rockingham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I too would like to take a moment to talk about the recent compromise on reciprocity, background checks, and domestic violence. Last month, when Attorney General Herring unilaterally announced Virginia would not be recognizing concealed carry permits from 25 states, we were obviously concerned about his announcement. The action infringes upon the rights of law-abiding citizens. It became a very important priority for us to restore the concealed carry agreements. After some candid discussions, I'm very glad to see we reached agreements to restore and expand concealed carry reciprocity, require state police to be available for voluntary background checks at gun shows, and prohibit individuals under permanent domestic violence protective orders from possessing a firearm. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to extend a special gratitude to Chairman Lingenfelter and Delegate Gilbert for their tireless work on these issues. Now, Mr. Speaker, we look at going forward, what that looks like. Delegate Webert will carry legislation to restore and expand reciprocity. More importantly, this legislation means Virginia will recognize valid permits from all other states and will require Virginia to expand reciprocity agreements. The Attorney General has 60 days from when the bill becomes law to enact the reciprocity agreements. This legislation will also prevent individuals who have had a Virginia permit revoked from having an out-of-state permit recognized in Virginia. On the issue of voluntary background checks at gun shows, Chairman Lingenfelter will carry legislation to require the Virginia State Police to be available at every gun show to administer voluntary background checks for private sales. This legislation will give people the assurance that comes from conducting a background check when engaging in private firearms transactions without mandating government oversight of private transactions. This is a good compromise that strikes the right balance. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of firearms and domestic violence, the governor will send down legislation prohibiting individuals subject to permanent protective orders for a domestic violence offense from possessing a firearm. This legislation is limited to permanent protective orders granted by judges after a full hearing with the opportunity for representation by counsel, which ensures due process protections for all parties involved. Purchasing or transporting a firearm while under any protective order is already illegal in Virginia. This legislation adds possession for permanent protection orders related to domestic violence, which is already illegal under federal law. This sends a clear signal about our willingness to protect victims of domestic violence. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, this agreement is not about which side won or lost. This agreement works for everyone involved, Republican and Democrat. Bipartisanship requires give and take from both sides. But, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, the citizens of Virginia have won. Our constituents expect us to do the right thing and expect us to stand up for their rights. And I'm glad to see we did both here. This agreement demonstrates that the Virginia way still exists. And when we set apart our political rhetoric, we can do the right thing. I want to thank Governor McAuliffe, Secretary Brian Moran, Senator Bryce Reeves, Delegates Gilbert and Lingenfelter for their hard work in making this happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.